Sir William Felix Browder warns of Putin's influence and urges European unity. Here is what Sir William Felix Browder, an American-born British financier and political activist, said during an interview with the Times Radio, UK. "I've spent the last 15 years fighting Putin, and most people didn't realize how dangerous he was until he invaded Ukraine. Then the world joined me in fighting Putin, and now we're at a pivotal moment where the leader of the free world wants to side with Putin against the victim." Putin certainly played a role in the re-election of Donald Trump. There was a Justice Department indictment of a Tennessee company that took money from Russian state media and doled it out to podcasters to promote the Russian party line. That was one out of 100 things that were caught. For every one of those, there are 99 more that we don't know about. Putin played a role in getting Trump elected. Trump got elected, not in a landslide. He had a landslide in terms of electoral votes, but he didn't get elected in a landslide. Just slightly more than half the people who voted for him. I should also point out that only half the people in the United States voted, so about 24% or something like that, actually actively supported Donald Trump. But that was what was needed. Putin got his guy in, and this was effectively Putin's Hail Mary. He's been taking losses like it's unbelievable. To put it in perspective, the Soviets lost 15,000 soldiers over 10 years in Afghanistan. Over 3 years in Ukraine, the Russians have lost 862,000. Putin has reoriented his economy from a regular economy to a war economy. They spend something like 7% of their GDP on war, 40% or greater of their government budget on military expenditures. They've lost all of their major markets. They had all these pipes going into Europe to sell gas. All that gas is no longer sold. Gas used to make up 25% of the tax revenues of the Russian government. Now it's at a loss because they don't sell their stuff to Europe, so they're now a war economy, and everybody's working on war stuff. What do you do with this million or so criminals in the military who come back, and how do you reintegrate them into society? Putin has all these incentives to keep this war going. He may want a pause because the economy is going badly, but it's not going to end the war. It's like the Minsk Agreement after Russia took Crimea and invaded Donbass. It was supposed to be an end to the war, but it wasn't. It was just a pause, which carried on, and then he launched it again. Whatever is agreed is not going to be the end of the war. It might be, if anything is agreed, a pause so Putin can rearm and make his next move. His next move will be in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania after America withdraws its troops. Zelensky is a hero. When the invasion happened, the Americans offered Zelensky a helicopter out of Kyiv, and Zelensky said, "I'm not leaving, I'm fighting." Nobody can forget that image of him, the selfie he took standing on the streets of Kyiv defying Russia. Zelensky did something truly unbelievable. He used his character, persuasion, and charisma to convince the rest of the world to help him fight off these evil invaders. He made powerful Churchillian speeches in front of parliaments and important people all over the world and rallied the world to help him defend himself. He couldn't have defended himself without Western military weaponry, and he got it. They defended themselves in a remarkable way. Russia had taken over a huge amount of Ukrainian territory, and they pushed the Russians back. Trump has two pieces of leverage: cutting off military aid to Ukraine and opting out of NATO's Article 5. He could say, "I'm going to pull all my troops out of Eastern Europe unless you go along with my plan. I will abrogate the nuclear defense infrastructure if you get in the way of my plans." People in Europe might say, "That's too unfavorable. We have to go along with whatever Trump wants." Trump has a maximalist approach to negotiation, which works on a one-off negotiation, but not over time. If he's firing all his shots everywhere all at once, we will adjust. We'll figure it out. France has nuclear weapons. The UK has nuclear weapons. We need to create our own nuclear deterrent. We have big economies. We can come up with money for our defense or Ukraine's defense if we need to. This only works on a very short-term basis. The world's not going to collapse because of this. It's just going to become a lot different. My hope is that Keir Starmer, the new German Chancellor, the French President, the Polish President, and a few other big people in Europe get together and decide to confiscate the $300 billion of Russian reserves and set up a defense fund to arm Ukraine. They should tell the Ukrainians that their military aid will not be cut off and that they should negotiate based on their own national interest. If they want to end the war now, they should. If they want to end it later, they should. The leaders of our countries need to have serious conversations with our constituents that we have a new world order, that we have to defend ourselves, and that we're going to have to invest in our military. It's going to cost money, but if you have no defense, you have nothing. That's the first responsibility of government, to defend the country. We should try not to fight with Trump, but we should not back away and behave like weaklings. The economies of Europe together, combined with the UK, are larger than the American economy. The population is larger than the US population. We're not helpless. We're only helpless if Putin or Trump can pick us off one by one. We're in an existential moment, but necessity is the mother of invention. It will cost a lot. It will be painful. But we can't just throw our hands up and say the sky is falling. We're not in such a weak position that we have to do that. I doubt whether we'll be able to change the entire defense attitude in the short term. I don't think the negotiations will result in an agreement. It will all be a lot of noise, and there will not be a peace deal. It's hard for me to imagine a peace deal that Putin and the Ukrainians will be happy with. If Trump doesn't have leverage over Ukraine, then they don't have to accept it. Trump can blame Ukraine for not accepting it and say to the American people, "I couldn't get that done because that dictator Zelensky wouldn't agree, but we're not funding them anymore." That can be his way of washing his hands of the whole thing. I predict that the U.S. will disengage from Europe, but I wouldn't be so pessimistic about what that means for our security. If Russia couldn't succeed against Ukraine, how is Russia going to succeed against Ukraine, Poland, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and everybody else? We have what we need to keep Russia at bay, including a nuclear deterrent. They may have more nuclear warheads, but nobody wants a nuclear war. There's not going to be a nuclear war against us because we have nuclear weapons, and France does too. In terms of conventional war, they would lose against Ukraine combined with Europe. They're losing, or barely succeeding, in a conventional war against Ukraine. It's going to be awful however it plays out. Putin is brash, but he's a bluffer. He thought we would fold just because everyone buys Russian gas, that we would never lift a finger. He was wrong. If we have to, we will fight back. If the U.S. pulls out, we just have to step up and show him that we are a deterrent. I was at the Munich Security Conference, speaking to foreign ministers, particularly from the frontline countries. Everyone understands where we are now. We have a new German chancellor coming in. He'll be better than the old one.